recording and its subsequent use. If you do not wish to be recorded, please take the following steps. Either turn off your camera, mute your microphone, or use an anonymous display name. And please do keep stay mindful that any contributions you make during this online training, including questions and comments, may be included in the recording. So if you have any concerns or do not wish to be recorded, you may choose to leave this webinar now. With that, the recording has started, and I welcome you all. Just a few housekeeping rules. Please mute your microphones if you're not speaking. Use the raise hand in case of an urgent question or comment, because we do have the Slido function, which we will use for the Q&A sessions, as well as the classroom exercise. We will learn more about it later on. Please do maintain professional and respectful communications at all time, and kindly turn off your video if you're not speaking again, and this event will be recorded and uploaded online. A quick note on the Slido. So the QR code will be shown throughout the whole training, and you can hop in on Slido or join us with the hashtag UNFCSP for the Q&A sessions, as well as the exercises that we will show towards the end of the webinar, the training. So the program of this training will start with an introduction to UNFC 2019, or the general UNFC, followed by contextualizing it with more specifications on primary raw materials, the mineral specifications, and the anthropogenic resources, the secondary raw materials, followed by a quick Q&A session, 10 minutes intermission. Later on, after the break, we will learn more on how to apply UNFC to strategic projects proposals based on the application form, followed by classroom exercises. We have 3 planned exercises, one on extraction, one on recycling, and one on processing, before concluding with a Q&A session and some closing remarks. So, without further ado, I pass the floor to Robert Thomas, Policy Officer from DG Grow, that is spearheading the works on strategic projects. Robert?
Thank you very much, Gadi, and good afternoon or morning, dependent on the location where you are. And warm welcome also from my side to this UN Framework Classification for Resources, in short UNFC training. The training is kindly organized by our colleagues from the UN Economic Commission for Europe with the help of members of the expert group on resource management. That expert group has been developing and promoting the classification for over almost 3 decades. So we speak about a really established system that we have selected to classify the strategic projects under the European Critical Raw Materials Act. So today training is about the application of UNFC to the strategic projects according to the act that went into force in May 2024. This year, on September 25th, we launched the second call for strategic project application with the cutoff date on 15 January 2026. The concept of strategic projects is the major instrument to boost our domestic capacities, as well as lowering our current external supply dependencies. To monitor our progress in achieving those goals, the Act also defines 2030 benchmarks for extraction, processing, recycling, as well as diversification. The designated projects are to be significant contributors to these benchmarks. A little bit about the first call. So the first call ran through from May to August 2024. We received not 140, as Gary said, but 170 applications from 41 countries, covering all 17 strategic raw materials, as well as all types of projects along the raw materials value chain. After the assessment, We have and consultation with the high-level representative of the member states sitting on the CRM board. We published the first list of 47 strategic projects located in Europe, and that list we later on in June we complemented with 13 projects located outside the EU. So currently we have 60 strategic projects to look after, to monitor their development and to look into how we can support. These projects cover 14 out of 17 strategic raw materials. If you want to look for more information about these projects, there is a dedicated strategic project website where you can find all the necessary information, including individual fact sheets for each of the designated projects. That includes also the UNFC classification. At the same page, you will also find all the relevant information regarding to the current call, guide for applicants, access to online application form, the slides, and also the recording from our almost 2-hour info day webinar that we organized last week on October 9th for potential applicants. So I guess that some of you were present there. So now let me remind you that the UNFC is a mandatory, UNFC classification of strategy is a mandatory for each strategic projects. Why? Why we have selected that? It gives us a harmonized tool to compare project development across the whole value chain. So it can integrate the extraction projects, recycling projects, refining projects, even the substitution projects. This is very important. The classification also includes the environmental and social aspects, into the classification. So it's not only about the resource reporting, but it also integrates these important aspects for the development of a raw material project. And last but not least, we will use, or we are already using, the classification, this instrument, to monitor the progress of each of the projects in time. And this is very important. So these are, in a nutshell, the reasons why we have selected this classification. Now, let me stress at the same time that the UNFC classification is not a selection criterion for the strategic projects, okay? It is a management tool for us, and the reason I just explained. So just to be clear that, whatever you provide as an initial UNFC classification to your projects, this is not to be taken into account for the selection process. Your initial, just for a process, that this your initial classification will be verified by the hired experts from the mostly from this expert group on resource management, UNFC, to give us at the end a harmonized, verified UNFC classification for all projects. Okay, so this is the process. So you do the initial assessment, and then the experts will look into this and compare with the information that you provide in the applications. They will either confirm it or modify it, as it should be. So I will finish here. I really wish you a good training. This is already the third training that is organized by our colleagues. The two were organized in the first round. Now we will also have two. So this is the first one of the second call for application. In 1 month, there is another opportunity. Please use the time wisely. So you have experts that will be providing you information. Ask as many questions as you need in order to save your time for when you will be assessing your project using the classification. So good luck and enjoy the training.
Thank you, Robert, for these opening remarks. I do agree with you. UNFC allows all strategic projects to communicate using the same language. So moving on to the first session of this training more on the technical aspects. So starting with the theory on the introduction to UNFC generic 2019 by Erica Ingvold. Erica, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gadi, and thank you so much, Robert, for that introduction. We are both pleased and honored over here in Geneva to be able to support the European Commission, the member states, and also you, the strategic project promoters who are in the process of applying to become a strategic project. And of course, we wish you all the luck, but as we all know, luck is also helped by a little bit of knowledge. So I'm going to start a little bit from the beginning why sustainable resource management is important and helpful and useful. And it's, of course, so that we can ensure production without compromising the environment, the economic stability, and social equity. It helps us understand those parameters and improve where we think it needs to be improved. And it balances the need for economic development with the preservation of environment and the well-being of future generations. As you hear, this is very strongly connected to the UN Agenda 2030 and its sustainable development goals. So what you do is that you, by sustainably manage your resources, our resources, we improve the quality of life, we mitigate negative social impacts, we can have an environmental stewardship, climate mitigation and adaptation, of course, and a responsible use and production. And as Robert mentioned, one very important goal for the EU, securing raw material supply chains. And to be able to sustainably manage our resources, we need, of course, a lot of knowledge and a structured knowledge. And this is where classifying raw materials comes in, and UNFC is what this is about, so that we can have relevant, consistent, transparent, and comparable information to all different stakeholders. So it's easier to align these kind of activities if all stakeholders have the same information organized in the same kind of way. And of course, governments are very interested in having this kind of information to be able to manage their national resources. The industry can use the tool to make different kinds of decisions on finance, on investments, on innovation, and so far, so on. And also for research, to having this kind of information available. For the financial community, for the transparency and on all aspects of a project, but also to civil society to involve and engage the community in the development of a project. So the whole thing of actually producing raw materials, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. You have all the stakeholders and you have your project, and you need to define it, you need to evaluate it as you go. And if you classify it, you can also report it in a way that is consistent from all the parts of the value chain, and for recycling, for primary projects, for processing. There is no other tool that we are aware of anyway that works for all of those different streams of production. And that's where UNFC comes in, of course, with the classification. And it's not, this system is very straightforward, but of course there are challenges of classification, how to classify, what parameters do you want? We made this slide because I guess a lot of you have tried to organize your records back in the days when we had more of those. And so you know that there are a lot of ways to do it. And to get out the information that you want, you and find the record or the song or the artist that you want. And it's a little bit the same with classifying resource projects, even though the main information is a little bit different. The UNFC is based on 3 criteria. It's the environmental socioeconomic viability as one. We refer to it as the E-axis. You'll soon understand why. It's also the degree of confidence of your resource. How much do you know about your resource? How sure are you that what you know is true about volumes, for instance? And then we have the technical feasibility. Do you have the methods you need? Is everything in place to be able to produce the raw materials that you want? UNFC is a generic framework. We call it a 3-tier framework, and it's applicable not only on the things we're talking about here today, but also on renewable energy, on groundwater, and different kinds of resources in society that society needs. But the structure is general and works on all those different cases. And as I said, it's the environmental socioeconomic viability, the technical feasibility, and the degree of confidence that are the 3 fundamental criteria. And if you look at the cube with the colors, if you look at the top to the left of the cube, you see 3 small green cubes. That's where you have the viable projects. So if you have a 111, you probably have a project that is producing already. You have everything in place on the 3 axes. If you are in the yellow field, you have a potentially viable project. If you're down there in the red, you probably need to do a lot more work to move it up to a yellow or a green cube or level in this 3-tier structure. So this is UNFC. And we always say it's easy to use. And it is. So you do it, you deal with those 3 different axes, and you put in the information you have there. So if you work within the EU, the E-axis is very much coherent with the permitting procedure. So if you are up there and have a 111, you have all your permits in place, and you can start or have already started your production. And it's a journey, of course, up towards E1, which is the best on that axis. And similarly on the F-axis, you know where you are with your pre-feasibility study or feasibility study or your investment decisions. And all those steps move you from down at maybe F3 up to F1, which is the best case. And the same goes for the G-axis, where you find build knowledge about your resource. If you do primary resourcing, you will look into your deposit and learn more and more about that. To move down from G3 up to G1, if you do recycling, you might want to know where you will get your waste from and be sure that you can get that waste. When you have information on all the 3 axes, which you will have with the other pieces of information that you will put in the application form, then you can put this in classes. So you will know if your project is a potentially viable or viable project. And to refer back to the previous round or call for strategic projects, those that finally got the status of strategic project, they were in the green or the yellow boxes, so viable or potentially viable projects. And I think it's important with the timing when you do this application so that you enter the benefits of the Critical Raw Materials Act at the right time. So because you know about the definite timing of the permitting, that you have a limited time, or the member states have limited time to work through the permitting process with you and so on. So to be where you're supposed to be when you enter is a good thing. It's an advice. Moving forward, just to go a little bit more in depth with the e-axis, you saw on the cube that we had E1, E2, and E3, and E1 is the best, where development and operation are confirmed to be environmentally, socially, economically valuable. So this axis includes consideration of market prices and relevant legal, regulatory, social, environmental, and contractual conditions. And when you do your classification, you should always do that, and they should be read in conjunction with the supporting explanation. To move on. So we also have subcategories on the e-axis, and especially for E1 and E3. E2 doesn't have any subcategories defined. And for E11, it's when you have the project is viable on the basis of the current conditions and on realistic assumptions on future conditions, whereas E2 is not viable on the basis of current conditions, but can be made viable through, for instance, government subsidies or other considerations. When we look at the F-axis, I mentioned there pre-feasibility or feasibility studies and so on. So for an F1 is, of course, the best again then. And this concerns where the project is, how technically mature the project is, and range from early conceptual studies down there at F3, maybe F4, and through a fully developed project that is producing. And again, then with your studies of where you are and how you can prove that this will work in practice. Let's see here how I can move on. Also, the F-axis also have subcategories. And F1 has both 1, 2, and 3. And F2 has 1, 2, and 3. F3 has 1, 2, and 3, and F4 has 1, 2, and 3. I think for your cases, you will mostly be interested in learning how to use F1 and F2 subcategories. I can imagine there are cases where F3 is also of value for you, but my guess would be that you would need F1 and F2 to describe your project. And you will be able to describe it with all the knowledge you have from the other parts of the application that you fill in. With your knowledge about your project, this is not going to be difficult for you at all. And for the G-axis, this is where you describe the degree of confidence in the estimate you do of the quantities that you think your project is going to produce. For solids, it's usually used in discrete increments, but for fluids, it's sometimes used as scenarios. So I think a lot of primary products are using the discrete increments, whereas recycling is often used with a fluid way of doing it, because you have streams of materials coming from somewhere, so it could be looked upon as a fluid. but it's a choice you make when you do your classification. And also here, G1 is the highest confidence. G4 is something that is mainly used when you're very early in the start of a project to know more about if you're even going to take the first steps, I would say. So when you've gone through all of this, and now you have a really strong project, you have found out that you have E1, you have F1, and you have G1, then your project would be a 111, a viable project of the highest rank, I would say. So a green cube up in the top left corner. You could show UNFC either in 2D or 3D. However you choose to think about this, this is helping you using all the information in your application to do this classification. It helps you to figure out if your project would be deemed viable or potentially viable or even non-viable. One thing that is important to remember is that the classification you do is a snapshot in time, but of course, it's not the only classification that will be done with this project. Over time, and when the project matures, you can travel through the cube or through this diagram and improve the conditions for the project. And I think that's super important to remember that this is not a one-time thing. The whole goal is to make a project travel from lower parts of the cube and up towards the green part of the cube. But this is a way of showing the classification in two different ways. And the subcategories that are in the cube, they can also be shown like this in a table. For the viable projects, you would have an E1. You could have any kind of F1, and you could have any kind of G. And for the potentially viable, you would be you would have a little bit more variability, especially on the F-axis. And as a help for you, everything starts with a generic specification that were published in 2019. It was, I don't know if it was the fourth version or it's been gradually improved and updated. And this is the one that we always refer to now. And it's a very stable product, and it's not much to be edited there. It works really well. But added to that, you have the supplementary specifications. So you have, Henrik and Ulrik will talk more about them, but there is one for minerals and one for anthropogenics. And in the minerals, you will also have some information about processing. And there are also guidance notes to these kind of supplementary specification. And on top of that, there are bridging documents from, for instance, for primary, you have a system that you might be aware of when reporting to stock markets, the Cerisco templates. They are bridged to UNFC. There are also a number of national systems that are bridged to UNFC. So those documents can also help you when you want to make your classification. They are really helpful, actually, and I've used them a lot when I've done classifications, and very easy to understand. Here is examples of how what bridging can look like. And just to wrap up with the benefits, it's when all of you and other parts of the Critical Raw Material Act actually uses UNFC, it gives member states and EU a consistent comparison within and across multiple commodities and value chains. It's globally endorsed, so by UN ECOSOC. So if you're a third country applicant, it also applies there. Simple to use, as I said. When you know your project, you know what numbers you will put on the E, F, and G to find the classes. And I also mentioned that it combines all resources such as energy resources, minerals, and groundwater, and is a global classification system. And the information that is collected in this system is environmental, social, and governmental issues at local, regional, and national level. This helps to financial resilience through the business process innovation, and it derives necessary social, environmental, and economic outcomes. It actually helps decision making because everything is structured in this similar way. So it's built on generic principles. It's based on the 3 fundamental criteria on the E, F, and G axis. And each criterion is subdivided into subcategories. So you get more granularity in your description. And it's a consistent classification that is dependent on how you carefully apply the definitions on your project. And I think you will find this very easy and straightforward when you get started. And don't hesitate to ask us, of course, if you have questions about it. So now I will leave the word to Henrik, who is the chair of the Minerals Working Group, to let you know more about how you do this with primary raw materials, the mineral specifications.
So, good morning from Yellowknife in northern Canada. I'm not as happily in Geneva and looking forward to a nice afternoon. I'm up in the north and our lakes are just freezing right now, so it's a little bit different. I wanted to talk to you a bit about how the UNFC works for primary raw materials, more commonly known in my universe as minerals. Because while we've talked a lot in terms of a very generic approach to how resource projects can be classified, each different resource actually has its own needs and requirements and details that can vary a bit from one resource to another. And so in the UNFC system, we have, let's see if we can get this to move forward, different specifications for each resource type as well. And these specifications allow the greater level of depth and detail to be applied to the UNFC system that are needed for each of the resources individually. And so for minerals, there's a supplementary specification for the application of UNFC towards minerals. And I recommend this as a starting point for how to classify a new project in your, if you have no other classification already done, if you haven't done anything for the market, this is really the starting point for classifying your project. And as part of that, we have to look at mineral projects through their evaluation in time. And that's one of the strengths of the UNFC is it incorporates this aspect of time into the classification and recognizes that there's an evolution of projects and that they change. And during that evolution, the quantities and the estimate certainties can change as well. And so that as projects evolve, the classification evolves as well. And this can be based on estimates of quantities that you do for your project in a fashion that's specific to your particular commodity, or it can be one that is done to meet market requirements. For instance, if you're developing a mining project for the stock that is publicly traded on a stock market, there, depending on where you're listed, there will be rules that you need to apply. And in both situations, those different rules can be adapted or accommodated by the UNFC system. So when you're looking at your project, you want to look at it from where is it starting at? Is it at the early stages? Are you prospecting and doing exploration? Are you involved in the mining? Is there actual beneficiation or processing of these minerals going on? Or are you now at the decommissioning and turning a project off stage? To even the remediation stage. At each point in the project's lifetime, there are approaches that can be applied to allow the classification of that project, and they're sort of laid out within the specifications. So in the whole looking at a project and how to classify it, the starting point is really the level of maturity. And when it's needed, you can actually go into subcategories of mineral classifications and really develop higher levels of granularity depending on your needs for the project. This, in the case of the UNFC, we're looking at singular classifications for the project as a snapshot right now. Where is it at and how is it, so that we can understand more how can that project grow moving forward. Now, there's also a distinction in the UNFC classification between sort of the environmental and socioeconomic assumptions. If you're looking at the stock exchange, some of these may be built into the rules for your reporting there. In the UNFC, there's a distinct axis that allows you to classify and clarify what your assumptions are and what the situation for a project are quite distinctly. And this is something that's a bit different than other classification methods, basically. There's also a distinction between potentially produced quantities and undeveloped quantities, and that you have to understand or look at where is the reference point for the materials that you are producing. Is this an estimate of what is coming out of a mill at the sort of and going to the market for sale, or is this an estimate of what is still in the ground and in situ, and allows you to sort of examine the categories of classification to sort of identify that level of certainty as well. So in the as Erica was showing you, there are different G categories for what's called the G axis. It's, in my mind, still the geological axis. Other resources get very angry at me because it's not just minerals' axis, but I view it as the geological axis. It allows us to sort of take all of the uncertainties inherent in a minerals project in the mining and categorize them this way. It basically has a G1 as the highest level of confidence and a decreasing confidence as we go down to a G4, where it can be a very prospective project that, you know, you have a good idea, there may be something in this area. That's the level of confidence a G4 supplies, as opposed to a G1, which is, I'm almost 90% certain that I will have 6 million ounces of gold in this, and I will have 6 million ounces of gold bars coming out of the mill at the end of this. So again, varying levels of confidence are built into the system, and how your project aligns with those levels of confidence is one of the challenges that you'll be facing. So again, the G-axis, as I said, I refer to it as the geological axis because it really primarily reflects the geological uncertainty impacting the estimate forecast for the project. And these uncertainties really reflect the availability of direct data, such as how many drill holes do you have through the deposit? What's your sample spacing? Can you really be confident that the ore deposits are continuous and that you can trace them, that you understand the geological complexities of your situation? And that allows you to determine what level of confidence you can apply here. Now, this also, there's no prohibition against using indirect methods as a supplement to this, such as if you have geophysical measurements and so on that allow you a greater degree of certainty that your continuity is there. Those elements can be added into supplementing your confidence levels. But again, it really comes down to the decision of the qualified person who is doing the estimate to develop that certainty. And in short, calibrated methods provide higher level of certainties, and the techniques that you use are not specified in the UNFC, but again, you should analyze and feel confident of the methods that are being applied to your estimate, and how that confidence can be communicated is sort of laid out in the mineral specifications. Now, as we go into we have a project and we are starting to report using UNFC, there are some requirements that are quite similar to the reporting requirements used for reporting to the stock exchanges through the CRISCO template. We have the basis of the estimate, we have an effective date, we have what are the products, where are the reference points, where are we measuring the quantities here. Is there an aggregation of quantities? So differing resource certainty levels, are they being added to provide a global resource? That's an example of an aggregation. The use of various numerical codes, depending on which country system you're using, what units and conversion factors apply in the estimate. And all of these things should be documented. All of the assumptions and tools that are being used in the estimate need to be written out so that the reader of the report can understand with certainty how this estimate has been made. There's always the problem of double counting. If you're aggregating two different confidence levels, have you incorporated the highest level already within a lower level, and you're repeating those resources in your estimate? That should be avoided at all costs. And are there requirements for national reporting? Depending on which jurisdiction you're working on, there may be standards that you have to meet for other legal purposes, and you should be ensuring that your report can also meet those requirements. I also recommend, as I said, the importance of what is known as the competent person or qualified person, depending on which market you're listed in. And there is an inclusion of a requirement for a competent person or qualified person in the UNFC as well. And it's more the one that if you're making an estimate, you should be identified as the person doing this work, and so that there is an assumption of responsibility with signing off as a qualified person for these reports as well. Now, if you already have a project that's listed on a stock exchange, you may be, or as a requirement for a national resource, or part of your tenure requirements and so on. There may be a classification system that you're already adhering to, and you should be looking to see if that system is an aligned system, which is a kind of a system that's already the comparison with UNFC has already been made. And if that has happened and it's an aligned system, there is probably a bridging document that has been endorsed by the expert group on resource management. And this bridging document then can help explain the relationship between UNFC and that classification system, and provide guidelines and instructions on how to classify that resource or convert that resource into a UFC classification. So again, that's another set of tools that are available to you. And basically, different examples exist for different resources. In PRMS, there's a bridging document for the petroleum system. For the solid minerals, we have the Crisco bridging document with the Crisco template. There's also other bridgings to different from other classification systems to UNFC that allow that sort of translation from their classification requirements into UNFC as well. And so here are some of the examples that are available currently. And we've just revised the one for minerals last year, and a new guidance document for how to use that bridging for Crisco should be available as an update this coming spring as well. But the current one is still very useful and very valid. There's some modest definition changes that we've adopted just to update it. So why would we want to do this bridging? I've used the example of the Crisco one simply because I'm more familiar with it, and it's also one that we're working on quite recently. So this example is just one of many bridges, and how it works here is what I want to get into a little bit more. UNFC is a generic classification system. It's for a lot of different resources, whereas the Crisco template is a resource for how to report to a stock exchange for minerals. It's quite specific which resources it's used for, and it has a very specific purpose, whereas the UNFC has a broader mandate and is much more widely used for by governments to classify their mineral inventories. It can be used by NGOs or other financial organizations to assess different projects and see how projects are evolving through time. It has a variety of other uses beyond just the reporting of a resource to a stock exchange. So it's a little bit, the two systems are similar but different. So in Crisco, the purpose of it is to promote the best practice in international public reporting of mineral exploration results and mineral resources and mineral reserves. It's a very focused purpose. It has a highly important purpose for meeting or allowing investors to have confidence in the results for the purposes of financial investing. It is an international advisory body without any real legal authority. It is just this year become a legal entity, though, and it's dependent on its constituent members to ensure that there is regulatory and disciplinary oversight at the national level. But it truly does recognize the global nature of the minerals industry. It's now, while this slide was from last year valid, it now has about 16 reporting organizations, and I have to update this one with once I get the news of who is currently has been added to this diagram. So it has a far-reaching impact on a global level, but each of these subgroups are responsible to meeting the national requirements for their jurisdiction as well. So again, while the Crisco template is a guidance and recommendations, it's up to the individual organizations to ensure that they're meeting national laws and national requirements for each of these countries as well. So that's important to recognize. Now, in the Crisco template, the McKelvey diagram that's used here, this is the main tool for classification of mineral results. You have exploration results at the top, and as you add geological knowledge, you start coming lower into your mineral resources. And then as other modifying factors, your metallurgy, the engineering required to actually extract minerals, and other business considerations such as your environmental, your social license, as well as the economic drivers of your project, start moving you towards the right on this diagram from a mineral resource to a much more confident mineral reserve. So again, some similar terms to what's used in UNFC, but a little bit different. And how they sort of align basically is we have our purple box of exploration results, and that can be tied to the purple cube in our UNFC system. So again, we have exploration results really can be classified as a 334 or 444 if you want, in some cases, depending on what your levels of certainty are. There are ways of classifying very notional results potentially. Now, as we get more information, the classification changes and our inferred and indicated and measured resources classify into the orange boxes in the UNFC cube here as well. And finally, as we get all of our modifying factors accounted for, and we develop mineral reserves that are highly likely to be economically mined, then those classify as well into the UNFC cube at the green box level here as well. So fairly straightforward classification and comparison. It's not complicated is the point that I wanted to make. Now, in the bridging document, there's sort of a presentation of how these two systems are aligned, and this new bridging document was released last year and updates our UNFC 2019 classification to the CRISCO template as was issued in 2024. So our systems are aligned for the current best standards, basically. The guidance document, it has been written. This one was published to take CRISCO 2019 to UNFC 2019. The new one will come out this spring, taking it to 2024. But as I say, if you're just starting in the classification, this document is actually quite useful. If you've already got a stock exchange approved report, then this is probably a good starting point for it. There's some minor modifications of some of the CRISCO definitions that were adopted in 2024, but none of it affects how the two systems can be interrelated. So in the bridging documents, just sort of going through some of the actual headers and chapters there, you can read it through. It's written in fairly plain English, so it's not a complex document, and it provides a variety of different topics if you're specifically interested in one aspect of how you relate your classifications together. And it allows you to sort of look at in much greater detail than just the generic classification system of that is in the 2019. It allows you to see how the different UNFC classes line up with the CRISCO templates and see make that adjustment. Now, previous bridgings have set the tone here, and really this bridging document has added more detail to allow the sort of greater granularity and just more relevant information to be used in the new classifications as they're coming out for the strategic projects here. In the documents as well, we provide the definitions as they're stated in the UNFC, but we also provide what are the CRISCO considerations and how, if you're looking at a stock exchange or directed report, how those considerations translate into the classifications for UNFC as well. So it should allow you fairly, if you have a report that's suitable for the stock exchange, it should be a fairly simple issue to convert it to a UNFC for you. That includes basically how the F-axis works as well, which is really a measure of project maturity in many ways. In the most basic level, if you're at a feasibility study level or have an operating mine, you're in the F1 category. pre-feasibility or a PEA or advanced public report on the mineral resource estimates is likely an F2. If you're doing advanced exploration results, first stage drilling and above that, then you're probably in the F3. And if you're really just looking at no more prospective ideas, you're in the F4 category. So again, some very broad categories, but hiding beneath that is all the granularity that can be applied for the subcategories as well. So you can use the bridging to provide you sort of the first level of assessment, and then go into the granularity to find out, are you an F2.1 or higher levels of detail there as well, using the mineral specifications or the generic classification. Similar bridging is available for the G-axis, as I've said earlier, so I won't go into detail here. If you have an exploration target, then there are approaches that are recommended for how to report that. This is an area that we're working with Crisco to examine in more detail how best to report these. There's generally a prohibition for reporting a lot of these on the stock exchanges. They're considered too notional for the investment community, but they're still an important tool for the UNFC to classify and develop a better understanding of, as we develop national inventories and better understandings of what is available on minerals for a global basis. Other guidance tools that I did want to mention are the Guidance for Europe document. This was a document that was written to help specifically support how the application of UNFC in Europe could be done. And basically, again, just it specifies there's two elements to it. It provides sort of guidance at the decision maker level and who would be using UNFC, but it also provides information for experts and resource estimate preparers in Europe and on how to classify their particular project for in the UNFC system. And as I said, part of it is heading towards developing national inventory, doing national mineral resource accounting, and allowing governments to have an informed basis for which they can make decisions when they're considering their mineral inventories. It also is linked to what's called the Inspire Code, which was developed in the EU Horizon projects. It is a way of now taking the classification and ensuring that the classifications can be utilized in sort of a standardized database system and allows sort of a spatial understanding, geospatial understanding of mineral resources throughout the European context. And it also sort of allows you to sort of see how projects evolve through time and how the classification can change along the different axes at different times, giving you sort of a visual on how the projects are actually progressing through time, and allowing governments, for instance, to see where is it that things are being held up. Is it that the market isn't right and that we're not progressing a project because of economic reasons? Or is it stalled for a political reason, such as there's an environmental permitting process that's not advancing and so on? So it's providing a level of tools to allow decision makers to examine how projects are evolving through time. And I also wanted to highlight another document, which is the detailed guidance. And it allows a little bit more information for project promoters. This document is available through the EU as well. And this will help sort of, if you've never done a UNFC classification and you're looking to how to do it for the purposes of this application, this tool also exists, and we'll discuss that a little bit more going forward. So I will in turn hand the presentation over, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hendrik. And we will learn more about these documents and their practical use in the exercises further in this training. With that, I pass the floor to Ulrich in support of with Marina, the co-chairs of the Anthropogenic Resource Working Group. Ulrich, if you can take control, please.
Okay, good afternoon. Let me check how this works. Take over. Does it work now? Got it. Let me
Yes,
check. I
you're
go
in
to the
control.
next slide. Let me see how this works. Right.
Perfect.
Huh? Yeah, again, good afternoon. My name is Ulrich Gahl. I'm chairing the Anthropogenic Resource Working Group at UNFC Expert Group of Resource Management, together with my colleague Marina Wittinghoff-Schiel from the German Resource Agency. I'm pleased to give you a brief introduction on the application of UNFC for secondary raw materials, anthropogenic resource specifications, and so on. Basically, it's about the application to recycling projects. What is the context of this work? As we all know, that raw materials can either be sourced from mining or from recycling projects. And Hendrik already explained to you how to apply the UNFC for mining projects, mineral resources, and so on. And this introduction here is now about the application to recycling projects. See how to move on? Yeah. If we take a closer look to the raw material supply in the European Union, we know that the total supply is already dominated by primary raw materials. And the secondary raw materials, depending on the type of secondary raw materials, play a minor role in terms of quantity compared to total supply. But secondary raw materials are getting more and more attention for several reasons. First, they can be produced in Europe and make Europe less dependent from foreign countries. The second is that the energy demand for producing, for instance, copper from waste is less than from mining. So to a certain extent, it makes sense also from an environmental point of view to focus on recycling and bring it to higher level and upscale recycling activities. Last point here on this slide is that UNFC is a very valuable tool because it allows to compare mining projects on the one hand with recycling projects on the other hand. So it's a common playing field. It's the same systematic. So that was explained in the previous talks by Erika and by Hendrik from Minerals. This also applies to recycling projects. There are some minor specifications for recycling projects that are very specific, but the general concept is the same here. There are also some UNFC documents. Of course, you already know the top level document. It's on the left-hand side. It's the generic document with the terminology and principles on how to apply the UNFC. And the second document is supplementary to the general specifications. There are some details regarding recycling projects. This is mainly an adoption of terminology, let's say, and how to understand more general terms in the recycling context. This document is publicly available. It can be retrieved from the UNECE website, and you'd find the link also in the presentation here. The agenda for today is quite brief. First question is, what is a recycling project? The second point is a very short UNFC use case. And the third point is just the conclusions. It's just one page. Let's move on. What is a recycling project? Of course, this is the matter of definitions. And if you have a closer look to the Critical Raw Materials Act of the European Union, there's Article 2.14, which defines critical raw material projects in general. So these are planned facilities, yeah, let's say on the green area where nothing is there currently, or planned significant extensions or repurposing of an existing facility. I think the second one is of special interest for recycling projects. Why? Because in the European Union, at least waste has to be treated. Yeah, there are for some waste streams there are already recycling targets or quotes in place that have to be fulfilled. So the waste needs to be treated. Yeah, there is no option to treat it not, let's say. And a lot of facilities are currently in place. Yeah. If you think about waste electronic and equipment, there are facilities in place to sort the waste and to recycle it and send the residues or to smelters and so on. And these facilities are currently, let's say, not aiming for specific critical raw materials. Why? There are some technical barriers, there are some financial barriers, there are minor concentrations in it, whatever. But these facilities, let's say, can be upgraded to contribute to higher recovery rates of critical raw materials. So these are existing facilities that might be upgraded or extended or repurposed. Yeah, so it's not only completely new facilities that are covered by the definition of critical raw material projects, also as a strategic raw material project, of course. The term recycling, this is also defined in the CRMA Act. The CRMA Act refers to the European Waste Framework Directive, so it's the same for the community as in the Waste Framework Directive. And also the Waste Framework Directive defines recycling, which is plotted here. It's any recovery operation by which waste is reprocessed into products, materials, or substances. Yeah. So this has been taken over from the existing legislation. There are two potential sources for the critical raw materials when it comes to, let's say, recycling projects. The first feedstock are end-of-life residues. I already gave you an example, waste electronic equipment. For instance, it could be also cars that are sent to a shredder, including electronic products. It could be construction, demolition waste, whatsoever. So every type of waste that ends up in the waste management system, either after the use phase or also after the production phase. Yeah, so production residues are included as well. And the second big type of feedstock are metallurgical residues and also mining residues coming in from primary production. So these type of residues are considered as well. And I think it was already explained by the representative of the European Commission at the beginning of this workshop that the UNFC covers the entire value chain. So no matter where you are in the value chain, if there is a residue, yeah, in the primary production phase, yeah, in the manufacturing phase, or in the end of life phase, all these streams are potential feedstocks. At each point of the value chain, you can define your recycling project or develop a recycling project and can send it to the European Commission for the recognition as a strategic project. Let's come to the use case. Just put yourself into the position of a project developer. Let's say you're the head of a recycling company. You're aiming for enhanced recovery of critical raw materials. You define your feedstock, which comes from the left, either the feedstock that you're currently getting from the collection system, or you set up new contracts with another collection system to get more feedstock, which is enriched in critical raw materials, for instance. Then there are several sorting, treatment, and recovery processes before the recoverable material is sent to the raw material market. So on the left-hand side, you have the feedstock. You might address maybe only one process, maybe just one treatment process or one recovery process in the whole value chain, and then you produce a product that is sent to the raw material market. and this is the point of sale. So what is colored in here is the reference point. This is the point of sale. This is the type. This is the point in your system where you hand the material over to the next either treatment operator or to the raw material market. The question is how to classify these recycling projects based on the UNFC principles. And I just have 3 slides. I go through it very quickly. Let's just say it's just the intention is just to give you an impression how it works if you're really going for an application as a strategic project, as a project promoter. You're going through the 3 axes. The first one is the E-axis, and in the UNFC, it's the environmental, social, economic viability. Yeah, and the first step is that you have to identify the contingencies or factors that affect the development of the recycling project. To make it a little bit more clearer, you are addressing, for instance, the legal compliance of the recycling project, the social compliance, is the profitability, is there already an offtake agreement in place, or are you negotiating one, for instance? And all these criteria that are listed here are explained in a guidance document that has been provided by, I think, UNECE and DG Growth. It's a guidance on how to assess the projects and how to apply the UNFC. So there is a template available that you can use. And the project promoters like you, they have to provide a justification for all of these contingencies or criteria. And this is just a generic example here. You see for the legal compliance, for instance, I just read it now that an environmental impact assessment has been completed and submitted to the authority. Permits according to the National Building Regulation and other regulations are pending. Yeah. You can also do this for the off-takers, for instance. This is the last row. Negotiations with 3 off-takers is currently going on. Yeah, so there is no off-take agreement in place, but there are discussions, and you're close to maybe complete such an offtake agreement. So the next step here, if you provide these justifications, is that you select these categories, what you see here in the 3rd column. Yeah, for the legal compliance, for instance, you write your justification, then you go to the UNFC document and say, okay, which category fits to this justification? In this case, it's E2. Yeah, E2 has a definition that is called the development and operation are expected to become environmental, socially, economically viable in the foreseeable future. Yeah, it's E2. It's not E1. E1 means that all the permits are in place. Let's say there are no further barriers. You can still move on. You're very close to production. Yeah, E2 is one step down. It means that you are still waiting for your permits. Yeah, it's E2. And then you're doing the same for the social compliance issue, for profitability, so for the economic dimension and for the offtake agreements. And of course, the template that is provided by DG Grow provides more criteria and very detailed explanation to help you in getting these justifications. What is important to mention is that this justification need to be based on evidence. Yeah. So if there is, for instance, taking the first example with the National Building Regulation and other regulations, these permits are currently pending. So you have to provide the evidence, yeah, that the permits have been submitted and that they are pending. Yeah. So this evidence is crucial. Yeah. And you can only provide justifications if they are based on evidence. The next criteria is the technical feasibility criteria. It works in the same way. It follows the same logic. One of these aspects, for instance, is the readiness of the sorting and the treatment technology. In this case, for our hypothetical example here, you know that the system prototype has been demonstrated in an operational environment. It corresponds to the TRR level 7. And then you see in the guidance document that has been provided by DG GROW and UNEC that this refers to the class or category F1.3, right? The same is for transport infrastructure. So you have to assess if the transport infrastructure is already in place or if it's under development, if you have all the commitments, if the community close by, for instance, allows you to build this transport infrastructure and so on. In this case, this is an F1, same is for energy supply. So you could imagine everything that has to deal with the technical feasibility is put into this major criteria, technical feasibility. It's the same here. As already mentioned, you try to find these justifications that corresponds to the categories. You select a category and that's it. The last criteria is the degree of confidence in the product estimates. So you have to make an estimate on the quantities that will be produced by your project. Yeah. There are different G-axis uses. Let's keep it simple. I'm choosing the confidence in the estimate approach here. And as mentioned, you have to forecast the product quantities. Yeah. And this goes along with the definitions in the E and the F axis settings. Yeah, for instance, so you define your project. For instance, you define that the permits for the buildings and the facilities are currently pending, yeah, but you already submitted them, so you applied for them and you ask for approval. And if you're assessing if you're doing the forecast of product quantities, you assume that you get the permit, right? So you assume that the project, as you defined it on the E and the F axis, is fully implemented. Yeah. So in this case, let's just say you mapped already the flows. This is a very small picture, but it shows the feedstock in tons per year. For instance, on the left-hand side, it moves to a sorting process. Then you have 3 different treatment steps. And each of these treatment steps produces a certain quantity of copper, for instance. Yeah, you have then 3 different fractions, copper fractions as an output fraction with different grain size, for instance. Yeah. So you're making this assessment, and then you're going to the UNFC and see, okay, that's fine. I expect to produce 2,800 tons ferrous metals, for instance, yeah, or 600 tons non-ferrous metals, heavy fractions, including strategic raw materials. And of course, then you have to define the concentration of strategic raw materials in the non-ferrous metals, for instance, for the strategic project purpose. And these are the quantitative data, and then you have to provide this a qualitative description. Yeah, it's for instance that sampling and analysis of the feedstock has been undertaken over the last 5 years. The regional waste outlook estimates are show a slight increase in terms of volumes by 3%. A change in waste composition is not expected because the feedstock includes metal-containing wastes that are not separately collected, for instance. Yeah, and the same here. So you also have to provide evidence for this, or if there are any sampling protocols available that give evidence for these statements here, for these justifications, then please also provide them and attach them to the application. And based on your estimate, you feel that this is the G1 category, which says that the product quantity associated with a project can be estimated with a high level of confidence. There's also a moderate level of confidence and a low level of confidence. In this case, you feel that the data quality is quite good and the supply is quite stable, so it's fine to have a G1. At the very end, you put all the information together. So you put the information from the E-axis, from the F-axis, from the G-axis together. You combine them into what you see here in the yellow colored box. For our hypothetical example, we have an E2 F1.3 in the G1 and you take this combination of categories and go to the UNFC table of UNFC classes table. In this case, we select the row with 221, and this is a potentially viable project. So what you see here is the potentially viable project. This is the UNFC class. Yeah, it's just it describes the maturity level of a project. Yeah, and the E, F, and G are categories. Yeah, and the combination of the categories define the class, which stands for the viability of the project. And I think what comes also very clear from this slide is that, of course, the E, F, and G categories, this can change. So for instance, take the permits as an example. If you get the permits, for instance, yeah, this might give you a higher level on the E-axis. So maybe you can go to 1.3 or 1.2, whatsoever. So if there are changes, let's say over time, the changes affect or require a reclassification of the project. Yeah, the projects can move up in the chain. So let's say if they become, if you resolve some barriers, then they move up to the viable project phase. But if you face more and more challenges, then the project can also move down, for instance, yeah, to non-viable projects. So, and this is the beauty of the UNFC, that you have to track the projects over time, and you see the maturity level of each project. And it also makes sense, for instance, if you have more projects, so more than one, yeah, you see how these projects evolve over time. This brings me to my last slide. To the conclusions is the key message is that UNFC is applicable to recycling projects as well as to mining projects. The classification needs to be based on evidence, so please provide any information that is available that helps the evaluators and the European Commission to assess your project. And the third point is that the classification is a snapshot in time. Yeah, so if there are changes over the time, like you get the permit, getting the permit might reclassify your project. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. Gadi, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this comprehensive overview on how to apply UNFC to classification recycling projects or anthropogenic resources. With that, now that we saw a bit more about how UNFC is applied in different contexts, primary and secondary raw materials, and the generic form, we can move to our first Q&A session. Hopefully that works by joining this QR code, by scanning, this QR code and joining our Slido function and answering your questions in real time. However, we are running a bit behind on schedule, so we'll keep this Q&A session a bit brief, but we will have another one later on towards the end of the training. So with that, I give you a few minutes to join the Slido. Following this Q&A session, we will have a brief break or an intermission just for coffee, etc. So we do have a question. First is, are industrial waste streams / reprocessing of tailings addressed in the guidance? That is, in fact, addressed, yes. We will share a list of documents along with the guidances and the generic UNFC, all the needed or required documents for a proper application of UNFC with the participants, and they're mostly available on our Knowledge Hub on the UNEC webpage. But this will be also shared. So I can mark this as answered. How do you apply to landfills projects? I can pass this question to Ulrich, but landfills are also seen as stocks, so that could be either tackled as a primary project, as a primary raw material project, where extraction is if they're extractive waste. Of course, if they're waste either from end of life or metallurgical waste, then they can be handled as recycling projects. Ulrich, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, I think it really depends what you understand now as a landfill. Is it landfill for instance, secondary wastes from thermal treatment plants that, for instance, treat municipal solid waste? Then you have slags or ashes, or if it's really a residue from the mining sector, from primary production, if you consider this as a landfill. I think in the second case, the existing industry standards like PERC and the Crisco templates, they are already applicable to mining residues. Yeah, so if you already have a reporting format for this type of residues, you can use the bridging document, for instance, to come to UNFC. If it's a, let's say, sanitary landfill, yeah, which, for instance, slags and ashes, you can still already apply to UNFC directly, yeah, without using the PERC or the Crisco template. So this works well, and I think there were already some strategic project applications for mining landfills in the past, but I need to check this. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, the question was more on urban solid waste. I think this was properly addressed. Thank you, Ulrich. The next question is, isn't it possible to apply to this CRMA call? Let's say if my nickel project will not progress beyond extraction phase of the run of mine or concentrate. I will hand over to Erica, but I believe this all depends on the maturity of your project and whether with the recognition it can progress into production before the benchmark here, which is 2030. Erica?
Yeah, so it really depends. One of the benefits with becoming a strategic project is, of course, that you get a fast track through the permitting system. So if you need that, if you don't have a fully permitted project, you want to make an addition to your permits that you already have, then it should be of value to become a strategic project. But if you're already up and running and producing and you have everything in place, maybe it's not valuable for you to apply, so to speak. But I don't really understand. My nickel project will not progress beyond extraction phase of the run of mine or concentrate. So yes, Gadi.
I think you answered that. The essence of the question is whether they will be able to produce after. So the run of the mine is after 20.
So just for the completeness of it, let's say you have mine waste where you have nickel left, and that might be of interest to explore as the next step. Then it could also be of interest for you to look into this, depending on where you are in your process.
Thank you, Erica. Another question is the term qualified expert. Is it an additional title to CP or QP in Crisco, or is it a SPED for authorities like geological surveys or mining authorities? The term qualified expert is different in the UNFC jargon or the UNFC world. It's more as an ethical note, as Hendrik mentioned earlier in his presentation. I don't know, Hendrik, if you would want to add something to that.
Yeah, I mean, there's similarities between all three. They share the same concepts, that basically there is a person who is assuming responsibility for the estimate and who has put their signature on this document so that as a statement that this is correct, while that has ethical components to it as well. It also has legal components to it. So it's not a title per se. You don't become a qualified person by signing a report. You are assuming the responsibility for that report essentially.
Perfect. Thank you, Hendrik. These will be the last two questions in this session. We have another one planned for towards the end of the training, so please be patient. This one is whether applying to EU call for tenders requiring UNFC classification, are any documents mandatory to back up the classification disclosed in the application form? Well, the documents, that classification itself should be evidence-based, and these documents are requested by the application form that you provide when applying or submitting your application per se. And these are interlinked with the UNFC classifications and the different axes within the tool itself. We will learn more about that after the intermission. Lastly, do we describe the project by listing all resource categories? Example, the project has indicated and inferred resources. If not, which class do we show?
Yeah. For this answer, in the situation of the strategic projects, I would recommend the highest level of confidence project. That is the best one to put forward.
I agree. And just for your information, for the project promoters, that the application form only allows the selection of one category for the G axis. So either G1, G2, or G3, although in the UNFC, G1 plus G2 exists, etc. But this classification needs to address the most abundant, let's say, resource, or the main focus, preferably the strategic raw material, as well as the one with the highest confidence. So with that, I thank you for your questions. I think we're past the break. Maybe we can take a 5 minutes intermission and then rejoin at 4:40. Yes.
That sounds good. Thank you, Gadi.
Thank you, Erica.
So, Gadi?
Yes, Ulrich.
Also, Gadi, you're now moving on and showing the examples, right? I mean, asking the people to follow the exercise and this stuff, right?
Correct.
Okay. Do you need my attention for this part of the webinar, or are you planning some Q&A at the very end?
We got this covered, Ulrich, if you're busy with other stuff. Do not worry. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Gadi. Then have a good webinar and maybe see you next time.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ulrich. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gadi. Bye-bye.
Bye. I think we can resume. What do you think, Erica?
Yeah, I think we can move on.
With that, then, I invite you to take control and move on to our last session before the exercises and the second Q&A. Erica, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gadi. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the connection between the classification and the CRMA application form. Just to get you started, it's Article 7 of the Critical Raw Materials Act that is one of the 4 provisions for UNFC in the Act. And it says that for strategic projects, project promoters must classify their projects according to UNFC. And you have heard a lot about why already, but it's applicable to all the 4 different kinds of projects that are expected to come out from the Critical Raw Materials Act. And the purpose with using UNFC is that it highlights sustainability measures, indicates technical maturity, and the degree of confidence in product estimates. And it's a fast way to get an overview of all the strategic projects within the Union or connected to the Critical Raw Materials Act. And when you classify, you will need supporting evidence. You will have these evidences that you need in the other parts of the application. For those of you who joined the Info Day organized by DG Grow last week, they explained a lot about the entire application form. So the role of UNFC is as an assessment tool, as a monitoring tool for long-term progression of these projects, but also of all the critical raw materials activities within the European Union. So it builds a solid ground on how we're doing towards the benchmarks and where to go with the benchmarks after 2030. It helps to identify project strengths, gaps, and areas for improvement, but also gaps within the jurisdictions that those projects are located. And they indicate need for fast permitting or financial report, and so on and so forth. And it's a way for you to summarize your application in this cube. So it's a very good thing for you to use also when you want to assess your own project and get a feel for if you're there yet, if it's time in this call or maybe the next one to make the application. And the process is like you start to classify your own project when you prepare your application. It shouldn't take you more than a day. And then the classification is reviewed by the Commission and technical experts, including UNFC experts after the completeness check. So it's going to be more or less 4 experts evaluating each of the applications for this. And we have gone through this a couple of times. Those things in the cube are connected to different fields in the projects form where you do your application. There is also a guidance on the European Commission's webpage for this that explains how you fill in the entire form, but also the UNFC part. And just to repeat, it's useful so we have prepared something for you so that you can connect the fields in the strategic form to the UNFC, and those controlling factors that we've been talking about are the ones that you will need to have knowledge about in your own project to be able to classify. The impact on project viability, it's about the controlling factors impact. They may directly or indirectly influence your viability, and it assists classifiers, yourself and others, to make the final classification. And it's the E, F, and G axis that we're talking about still. And it provides information and granularity if you use the entire space of the UNFC field to provide information. And I wanted to give you a notice that depending on your projects, and you are the best ones to know, not every controlling factor is equally important in every case. So what we see before us is that when you do your classification, you used your balanced judgment on those controlling factors to reach something that you believe in and think is the best description of your project. And this is what I talked about in the application form. There are different pieces connected to the UNFC cube. The E-axis is marked in green. The F-axis, technical feasibility, is marked in yellow. And the G-axis part is marked in blue. And these are the supporting evidences that we're talking about, the attached documents to the whole application as such. And what else? So again, you know this with the potentially viable projects, you will find this information in UNFC 2019, how they are defined, these different boxes, which will help you forward. And you could do it as a table, as we said. For instance, this case, development on hold, is a project that has 2, 2, 2, and 1, 2, or 3 on the G-axis. What happened now? So the E2 in this case is development and operation are not yet confirmed, but can be. Remember, it's when you report it, it's timestamped when you send it in, but of course the project is expected to develop and moving forward and may move up to E1. And this one has an F2, and also here maybe there are more studies that need to be done to move this project up to an F1. You will find the definitions in, as I said, in the UNFC 2019 document, and here for the G2, where you have a quite high but not top quality of the data of your resource. And what's coming here? I think I'll jump this with respect to time. So when you put everything together, you will land on a place in the table like here. It's a potentially viable project, but it's on hold for some reason, and you might need, either you or someone else need to do some work to move it forward, and so on. So just to summarize, you do the classification on the different axes, you put it together, and you get a total classification for your project. You start with assigning a class to it, hopefully for your sake viable or potentially viable, which would put you in a place where you jump into the process at an optimal time. And with that classification, you get the first level of detail, so it's easy to recognize. You use the categories and subcategories to get more granularity, and you put together everything to an overall classification, and then then can be verified by experts. And this table is to help you navigating the strategic project form, application form fields, so that you know what to use where in the UNFC classification. You can, of course, do it straight up as well, but this is a little bit of a help if it's the first time you do this. So I think I stop there.
Thank you, Erica. Exactly as you mentioned, now with the exercise, we will see this methodology on how to apply UNFC to your strategic project proposals, basically following a top-down approach. So starting with the class as a first look into your project, understanding whether it lands on viable, potentially viable, or non-viable. I do not think that's the case for strategic projects, as it goes out of scope when it comes to non-viable projects. Further digging deep into the class, to understand better your project status, and supporting it later in the third phase with the categories and subcategories for, as Erica just mentioned, further granularity, and then the overall classification verified based on the details and the controlling factors of your project itself. So with all the theory that we have learned today, we will jump into the practicality of UNFC, and with the three classroom exercises on classifying your strategic projects, proposals, and at this point, according to UNFC. So with that, I do invite you to scan the QR code again to join the quiz or the exercise itself. We will go through each exercise systematically, as in going first or tackling first the E-axis, the F-axis, and the G-axis, and then putting the overall classification itself towards the end. We will see again an extraction project, a recycling project, and lastly, a processing project. So first, and I hope you're ready, we'll start with hypothetical. Of course, all these exercises are, but contextualized in suitable for strategic projects. So let's consider a lithium mining project in Italy with a plan to extract lithium from high-quality spodumene deposits. Given the defined benchmarks for strategic raw materials as outlined in the Critical Raw Materials Act, this lithium extraction project holds strategic significance due to the increasing demand for lithium-ion batteries in electric vehicles and renewable energy storage systems. So the project is in need to expedite the permitting process, therefore applying for strategic projects. As you know, in the EU especially, this is a benefit of recognition, so having a faster track on permitting processes. The project promoter has collected the relevant information for the UNFC classification tied to this project based on the strategic project form that Erica showed earlier, and the UNFC controlling factors linked to this form, and assign them to the E, F, and G axis, so going systematically. Let's start with the E axis. The QR code is up on the top right corner for you to scan and join the exercise itself. So the project was in ownership of an exploration permit, during which a pre-feasibility study, evaluation of the resource/reserve, environmental impact assessment, and operational plan were conducted. The project is currently preparing to apply for an extraction permit. Current plans and assessments suggest that the project's development could proceed forward in the foreseeable future. With regards to the economic aspects, the submitted business plan includes information on production, sharing, royalties, taxation, market demand, and production costs, so all the economic aspects. From an environmental standpoint, the project has issued a positive environmental impact assessment compliant with the Italian regulation. Additionally, the project is initiating an application for mining waste permits to be submitted for public inquiry. Land use planning is also under process. Given that the area is remote and historically centered on mining activities, social contingencies and opposition seem unlikely. So for the first question is, What is the correct UNFC category for the E-axis? Is it E1, viable, E2, potentially viable, or E3, non-viable? So let's move on to join the quiz for you to answer. Don't be shy. Yes. We'll wait for more. Come on, one more. Perfect. You can always join the quiz as we go on with it. The QR code is always available, or you join us on the hashtag UNFCSP. So you have 30 seconds for this project, lithium extraction. What is the correct UNFC category for the E-axis? Is it E1? Again, that viability is confirmed. E2, yet to be confirmed, and activities are ongoing to confirm it. Or E3, non-viable at this point, at least, in time, of course. I see that more participants are joining, which is good. So the majority answered E2, which is the correct answer. So again, the project was in ownership of an exploration permit, still to apply for extraction, etc., and the necessary licenses. They are at pre-feasibility study. They're preparing to apply for the permits, as I mentioned, and the plans are still in suggestion, or they're suggesting, so still yet to be confirmed. So as the majority responded, the correct answer is E2 in that case. Now let's move on to the F-axis. So the project has completed the feasibility study, but the project is still in the planning phase and hasn't commenced extraction operations since the developments await the extraction permit. So the project activities are not ongoing for the moment as they're awaiting for the extraction permit to proceed forward. So what is the correct UNFC category for the F-axis? Is it F1.1, 2.1, 2.2, 3.1? So get ready. Please do cast in your answers. F1 as in the technical feasibility is confirmed. F2 as in ongoing, the activities are ongoing. And F3 as too early to evaluate the technical feasibility at this point in time. F1.1 means the project is on production. 2.1 activities are ongoing, and 2.2 as in on hold or awaiting further notice. The majority answered F2.2. Let's see, it is the right answer for this project. Again, they're still at pre-feasibility study, on hold. They're waiting to proceed forward with the maturity or the technical feasibility confirmation of the project, but yet it remains subject to certain amount of delay since they're waiting for the extraction permit. So the right answer is F2.2. Now for the G-axis, and this is an exercise on the translation mechanism or the bridging document that Hendrik presented earlier in his intervention. So the G-axis, the lithium reserves have undergone a detailed exploration campaign and are well documented with sufficient investigation measures and carried studies, including geochemical and geophysical analysis, to estimate the lithium quantities and qualities, volumes and grades, between brackets. There's also substantial geological knowledge about the area. The project has conducted a pre-feasibility study that includes reserves estimates signed off by a competent person. The reserves estimates are probable as per the PERC standards. PERC is part of the CRISCO family. The project is certain with moderate degree of confidence that the foreseen amount of produced lithium will be met. All supporting documents on the estimates have been submitted with the strategic project application form. So what is the correct UNFC category for the G-axis? Is it G1, high confidence, G2, moderate level of confidence, or G3, Please do use the bridging table that is shown on the right side of the screen. Get ready. Please do cast in your answers. Again, G1, high level of confidence, G2, moderate levels, and G3, low levels. As a reminder, there is G4. However, G4 is for prospective projects, so early exploration. And in that case, it's not within the scope of this project per se. Plus, we did need to make it more easy and understandable. Time is up. So the majority has answered G2, which is the right answer in that case. Again, pre-feasibility study, you can see on the table itself, we're talking about mineral reserves, that they're probable. So G2 is the right answer. A simple translation mechanism using the table of the bridging document here. So now let's put everything all together. So what is the correct UNFC classification for this project? Using that table, of course, so the class, the subclass, and the categories with the subcategories for some. Let's see. Is it E1.1, F1.2, G1? So the project is viable and approved for development. 2, 2.2, 2, as in potentially viable and development on hold. 3.2, 2.2, 2, non-viable, development unclarified. Five seconds. Perfect. 100%. Everyone answered perfectly. So yes, of course, the project is potentially viable with developments on hold. So 2, 2.2, and G2 in that case. Perfect. Now that we did the extraction project, let's move on to the permanent magnet recycling project. So this is more on secondary raw materials, anthropogenic resources. Again, let's go systematically, starting with the E-axis. So the project is the result of several R&D, research and development projects in the field of permanent magnet recycling and had public subventions from regional entities. Last year, the company bought land in a region where they plan to build a new recycling plant with an interest to invest in circular economy. They are waiting to sign a partnership with a big company from e-waste collection sector. In this moment, the project is working with an environmental consultancy company on the environmental impact assessment in order to present the project to environmental/industrial authorities. The previous work has been done in the R&D plant that the company already have elsewhere. So what is the correct E-axis category? Is it E1.1, 1.2, 2, 3.1? Get ready. You have 30 seconds. 1.1 as in fully viable. 1.2 as in supported or made viable by governmental subsidies or other considerations. E2, not viable yet to be confirmed, let's say. And 3.1, non-viable at this point in time. Please do cast in your answers. 5 seconds. The majority selected E2, which is the right answer. Correct. So they had public subventions. They bought land in a region where they plan. It's a planning thing to build the new recycling plant, so still not built. They are waiting to sign a partnership for the agreements with for stocks or the feed, etc. And their environmental impact assessment is yet to come forth. So E2 is the right answer for this project. Now moving on to the F-axis. So the project looks to recycle permanent magnets in a closed loop, magnet-to-magnet recycling. The process is validated in an industrial pilot scale. The company estimates their TRL, the technology readiness level, of the process at 5. The upscaling of the process is under assessment by experts of the company. A first environmental benefit of the process compared to primary extraction of REEs, rare earth elements, has been done and demonstrated the benefits of recycling. So what is the correct UNFC category for the F axis? Is it F1.1, 1.2, 2.1, 2.2? Get ready. Please do cast in your answers. 1.1 means that the project is on production. 1.2 is a question of investments, whether they're secured or not. So if secured or capital has been allocated, then it's 1.2. If, F2.1 is that everything is ongoing to confirm the technical feasibility. 2.1, project activities are on hold or subject to further delays. Time is up. The majority responded 2.1, which is the correct answer. So yes, they validated in an industrial pilot scale, and the TRL is at relative high levels. So again, TRLs go from 1 to 9, 9 being fully validated and 1 being very conceptual. I'm sure you're aware of it. So the correct answer in this case is F2.1. Now for the G axis. In press releases, the company is communicating that the plant will have a capacity to treat up to 1,000 tons per year of magnets, doing first physical treatment and later magnet recovery. The product is reprocessed magnets. The company declares the intention to work with 3 main permanent magnets waste flows: permanent magnets from e-scooters, magnets contained in vehicles, and wind turbines. For e-scooters, the company knows that the dismantling of the project is easy and cost-effective. The company is discussing with e-waste collector in order to secure a certain volume of e-scooters, end of life in 2 or 3 European countries, but this partnership is still not fully finalized. In vehicles, the company is under discussion with vehicle scrap companies, but discussions are less in evident and advanced compared to e-scooter. Finally, based on the MFA, material flow analysis, the decommissioning of wind turbines with permanent magnets is not expected to have a significant volume of magnets in the short term. The company does not consider it as a major waste for recycling until 2035. So what is the correct UNFC category for the G axis? Is it G2 of the reprocessed magnets from e-scooters and G3 from vehicles? All are G2, or G1 from e-scooters and vehicles and G2 from turbines? So here we're classifying the different streams. Get ready. Again, the project is tackling 3 different streams: from e-scooters, from vehicles, and from turbines. Is it G2 from e-scooters and G3 from vehicles? Are they all G2? Or is it G1 from scooters, e-scooters, and vehicles, and G2 from turbines? Again, G1 means high level of confidence, G2 moderate, and G3 low level of confidence in product estimates. Time is up. The majority answered G2 for reprocessed magnets from e-scooters and G3 from vehicles. So why didn't we classify turbines this waste stream, since it's out of scope for the strategic projects? We're talking in 2035. So for the main purpose now is to focus on the e-scooters and vehicles. Again, the company is in discussion with e-waste collectors in order to secure a certain volume of e-scooters end of life in 2 or 3 European countries. The partnership is not fully finalized yet, so it's confirming the viability itself. And for vehicles, it's still under discussion with vehicle scraps company, but discussions are less in advance compared to e-scooters. So the correct answer here is G2 for magnets, for magnets from e-scooters, and G3 from vehicles. Now let's put it all together. What is the correct UNFC classification for this permanent magnet recycling project? Get ready. Is it E2, F2.1, G2 plus G3, potentially viable, development pending? 1.2, G1 plus G2, viable, approved for development? 1.1, 1.3, G1, viable, justified for development? 2.2, G2 plus G3, potentially viable, development on hold. Now, just a reminder here, we did include the G1 plus G2 or G2 plus G3 for the sake of understanding the project. So the majority answered the first answer, which is potentially viable, development pending, and rightfully so. So yes, the project is potentially viable at the moment and development pending. I was just saying that we did include the G1 plus G2 or G1 plus G2 plus G3 or G2 plus G3 categories or subcategories here in this exercise, although in the application form, you can only select one G category. For that case, it would probably be the G2 since it's most reflective and it's most advanced with higher level of confidence. Of course, the G3 from vehicles will be mentioned in the application form. Last but not least, the copper processing project. So here we're focusing on processing. Let's delve into it. So copper mining project is planning to expand its operations with a processing plant. The mine is currently located in a historically significant mining region in Spain. The project aims to leverage the existing mining site to process copper ore into copper concentrates, which is crucial for various industries, including electronics, construction, and renewable energy infrastructure. The copper-rich region is well established with infrastructure to support mining and processing operations, including transportation networks and access to utilities. The foreseen processing plant will be at a 20 kilometers distance from the mine itself. This processing project wants to apply for the strategic project label or recognition for financial purposes. The project promoter has collected the relevant information for the UNFC class tied to this project based on the application form and the UNFC controlling factors, and again, dealt with it systematically. So going by E, F, and G axis. Starting with the E axis, an environmental impact assessment has been completed and the project has received preliminary environmental approval. The processing facility is designed to minimize emission and water usage, complying with Spanish environmental regulations. The project is also preparing to submit waste management plans for public consultation. The project has undergone a detailed feasibility study. However, adequate funding has not yet been secured for the project's development. The project site is in a region with a long history of mining activities and provides jobs to most of the community. Preparations for final permits are ongoing. So what is the correct UNFC category for the E axis? Get ready. Is it E1.1, 1.2, 2, or 3.1? Again, E1.1 meaning everything is viable, 1.2 made viable with other considerations, E2 not yet viable, awaiting certain progress or dealing with certain contingencies, and E3.1 non-viable at this point in time. Let's see. The majority answered E2. However, the right answer here is E1.1. Why? Because the development and operations are confirmed to be environmentally, socially, economically viable, with the developments and operations based on the current conditions and realistic assumptions of the future. So they are at a detailed feasibility study, quite high in technical studies. The only problem here is the funding. So they are permitted or they are the permitting itself, they're ongoing. So E1.1 is most representative here. I see how many have selected the E2, yet we're past this stage. So the contingencies are basically under this consideration of realistic assumptions that could be overpassed within or in due time. Now moving on to the F-axis, the project has completed its feasibility study, which includes detailed engineering designs and technological assessments. The processing technology to be used is proven and reliable, ensuring efficient conversion of copper ore to copper concentrates. Although the feasibility study is complete, the project is still in need to secure adequate investments before commencement of construction. So what is the correct UNFC category for the F-axis? 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, or 2.1? Get ready. Again, 1.1 means that the project is on production. 1.2 is a question of investments, whether capital has been allocated. 1.3 is that the technical feasibility is ongoing and justified. It's actually confirmed, but the studies are ongoing. And 2.1 yet to be confirmed, but the activities are ongoing. Please cast in your answers. So the majority answered 1.2, which is not the case because it's not. So 1.2 means that capital has been allocated, yet the project is looking for investors. So 1.3 is more suitable, and it means that the studies have been completed to demonstrate the technical feasibility, and there shall be reasonable expectations that all necessary approvals, contracts, etc., will be met for the project to be forthcoming. So again, they are at high levels of technical feasibility. The technology is proven, and they are at feasibility study. However, if the investments were secured, an F1.2 would be more apt in that case. So the answer is 1.3. Moving on to the G-axis, the copper ore at the existing mine site has been well documented through extensive exploration and drilling campaigns. Detailed geological surveys and sampling have provided a high degree of confidence in the quantity and quality of the ore, meaning that the ore reserves are confirmed and the processing facility is assured of a consistent supply of raw material. The project promoter has all supporting documents in order. So what is the correct UNFC category for the G-axis here? Is it G1, 2, or 3? Get ready. Again, 1 being high level of confidence, G2 moderate, and G3 low. Please do select your answer. Are we good on time, Erica?
Yes, we have 12 minutes left now, so maybe it's time to take a few questions.
Perfect.
When you're done with this?
We're almost done. So the majority answered G1, which is correct. Again, high degree of confidence, and the processing facility assured a consistent supply of raw material. And since it's somehow of an integrated project, since the mine is only within the premise of the vicinity of the processing plant itself, so this is a secured supply of raw materials. Now, just to finalize, let's put everything in all together. So what is the right UNFC classification for this processing project? Is it 1.1, 1.11, viable on production, 1.1, 1.2, 1, viable approved for development, 1.1, 1.31, viable justified for development, 2, 2.1, 2, potentially viable, and development pending. 5 seconds. So the final classification for this project is viable, justified for development. Again, showing Yes, so I do thank you for participating in this engaging exercise session. We do, however, see that we do have UNFC experts already with us from the first training. So congrats to you and kudos to everyone that participated. Now, before we finalize, Erica, I am not in track of time, so please do keep me aware. Let's move on to the second Q&A session, also joining the same old QR code. We have a question already. So this classification is only applied in, I believe that's EU. In Africa, is possible if we apply a project. I'm not sure. Yes, I'm not sure whether this is application of UNFC or application to strategic project, but please, Erica.
So I would say both are okay. You can apply for a strategic project located in Africa, and you can apply UNFC on a project located in Africa. And Africa is actually quite developed in this tool. They have developed their own tool that is totally aligned with UNFC, and another tool that we have developed at EC with the expert group called UNRMS. And I put links in the chat for everyone for you to learn more about what the African Union has accepted, but it's totally aligned with UNFC. So to both questions, the answer is yes.
Exactly. So we can mark this as answered. Let's wait a couple of minutes for additional questions.
So we have 8 minutes left of the training.
Perfect. We managed to do it quite well, right on time. Well, just to mention that in case no questions come to mind, at this moment, we do have a help desk available for project promoters, specifically for questions related to UNFC, where we do support you with your UNFC related inquiries or concerns and steer you towards the right or relevant references and direction itself. This is all.
I wanted to add that our colleague Min Woo shared in the chat also a link to our knowledge hub where you can go and see more, learn a lot more about UNFC. We have a lot of resources there.
Right. And this will also, the presentation itself, along with the relevant documentation, will be made available and published on the DG Grow strategic projects dedicated webpage. We have another question. Where can I find definitions of the required content of a pre-feasibility and feasibility study? This is very broad. Well, do you want to take this, Erica, or Hendrik, if you're still with us?
Maybe Henrik can take this one.
Yeah, the definitions, the best definitions that I know are part of the NI 43101 rules that are listed on the the Canadian Stock Exchange. That there is I believe JORC has a similar set of requirements, but you would have to look at their stock exchanges. So there certainly is a descriptor in the reporting requirements for NI 43101 that has the requirements of a pre-feasibility versus a feasibility study in there.
Perfect. Thank you, Hendrik. With that, I think we're done with this session. No more questions. In any case, again, the help desk is available for any future concerns or UNFC-related questions. So closing remarks, Erica, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I would like to wish everyone a constructive way forward with your applications, and I wish you good luck to become strategic projects. I think the work you do is really important for the European Union, and not only for the Union, of course. We see that there is a big demand for raw materials for everything we want to do with the energy transition and digitalization and so on and so forth. So I also wanted to thank you for your time, and don't hesitate to contact us if you have more questions that didn't come up in this session. So I think that's all for me. And I would also like to thank the trainers in this session for all your support and help.
Perfect. Thank you, Erica. I would just like to conclude with some main takeaways that UNFC is part of the application form. Again, it's mandatory as part of the recognition criteria. However, it's not a determining factor. So that class or that final classification given will not determine whether the project is suitable for recognition or not. It's mostly used to assess environmental and social and technical and economic, etc., all the different aspects and factors we saw that are presented by UNFC, as well as for monitoring the project developments over towards the benchmark year. The info day held on the 9th of October, 1 week ago, also presents more on the UNFC application, put in a generic view. We do have another UNFC training scheduled for November 12th, similar to this one. So in case you or your colleagues have missed the chance to participate to this one, please, you're more than welcome to join the one on the 12th of November. Post-training material include the detailed guidance, the training recordings, and the presentations and the slide deck that we just showed. Another thing is that project promoters do have to apply a UNFC classification through the application form or when submitting the application form itself. Again, the UNFC is a two-step verification process. So first by the project promoters, and then validated or verified by UNFC experts during the technical assessment phase, with experts supporting the commission. The given UNFC class, again, this is just a major reiteration that the given UNFC class is not a determining factor for the project recognition. With that, I also want to mention again that there is a help desk for project promoters. Please do contact me or Erica for any inquiries, UNFC related inquiries or concerns you have on your strategic project proposals. With that, I thank everyone and the speakers again for participating and presenting the UNFC in this very short term. Of course, UNFC is a very broad but yet simple tool to be understood. So I thank the speakers, I thank the participants, and especially those that engaged in the exercises and in the Q&A sessions. So thank you everyone for participating, and see you again in case you want to learn again more on UNFC on the 12th of November.